This video is sponsored by Calinex Mines. Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with FinanceandLiberty.com, and with us today, a new guest, Max Porterfield, the CEO and Director of Calinex Mines. Max, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, well, I'd first like to discuss a little bit about the economy. You know, a lot of my guests believe right now it seems like the dollar, the US dollar, is just being pretty much hyperinflated right now. The money supply is increasing so much that eventually it seems like prices have to catch up to that. And we're going to see a dollar collapse, and this could very badly impact the economy. What is your view on the U.S. economy right now?
No, I completely agree. I think the monetary policy that's in place and has continued to be in place over the past few years, where you've got this constant money printing going on, is going to be inflationary in nature and be very bullish for the precious metal space in particular. But longer term is very unhealthy for the economy, and where eventually they're kind of keeping on continuing to kick the can down the road, so to speak. It's all going to come to head eventually. So while the economy appears to be healthy, I think what's underpinning it's of deep concern because it's being driven by easy money. It's completely unsustainable.
In your view, is there any way that those in office can prevent this collapse from happening?
At this place, I'd be kind of skeptical to see how they're going to do it, because once you try to unwind the situation, you obviously don't know what you're going to find as you do that. I mean, you saw similarly that those type of things occurred in the housing crisis, and really, I don't think anybody anticipated the problems that were there underneath, everything. So I think once you just peel off the first layer, you start seeing more and more problems. So while I think some of the politicians that are running for election right now may have good intentions, I think the problems in trying to solve the problems is going to be much, much, much more difficult than anybody can anticipate, even in their most pessimistic view of things.
Now, in this economic environment, you said that investing in commodities and precious metals is probably a good bet right now. Did you want to expand on why you think this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, again, it's about real assets. So if you got an inflationary environment for the U.S. dollar, it's obviously going to cost more to buy those assets. And again, you're going to see precious metals perform extremely well as other real assets, other commodities and real estate, and those type of those assets will be performing very nicely in an inflationary environment, as those prices will kind of keep up to that inflation rate.
Definitely. And when it comes to investing in, for example, gold and silver, I ask a lot of my guests about what form of gold and silver to invest in. That's one of the questions that I always end up asking, because there are so many options for investors. There's physical metal you can hold in your hand. There's also exchange traded funds. There's futures. There's options. And there's also mining stocks. So in your opinion, what is the best form of gold and silver to invest in?
Well, I don't think there's any best form. I think everything has its strengths and weaknesses like anything else. I mean, physical precious metals, for example, is going to have a high transaction cost, and actually buying or selling them is going to be costly and time consuming and more difficult from a liquidity standpoint. Whereas investing in an ETF, for say, you can easily buy and sell it on the open market, but you don't necessarily have that surety, in your hand as precious metals. And then the third, which I also advocate a portion of the portfolio would be in the miners, because these are real companies that are exploring, developing, or producing these precious metals or whatever commodity they might be in, and you get leverage to that. So in a rising commodity price environment, gold price, silver price, or what have you, you're usually going to get a 2 to 3 times leverage by investing in the businesses, because as those prices expand, those margins or profitability expands exponentially to that, and you get a big move. So, again, I recommend a diversified approach within your allocation to the natural resource space, between both the miners as well as some exposure to the physical, whether it be through an ETF or actually purchasing, coins and bullion.
Now, did you want to discuss a little bit about what aspects people should, if they're looking to invest, for example, in mining stocks, what are some aspects of the mining companies that they should really look for to make sure they're investing in a good mining company?
Well, first of all, I think that the number one thing is, if you're investing in any business, is the people behind the business and who's actually operating it. Because like anything else, you can have the best asset, best widget, best idea, but you really need people and human capital to go out and execute, to raise money, to grow the business and to manage things. And really, you can, the world, they ask you to be one of the best in the world, but you can have a group of people that might not be the best managers, of a company, might not have the best technical expertise, can really turn into a big blunder. So I think people are going to be key. And again, jurisdictions, in the flight to quality, I think especially right now, you want to invest in these kind of assets or mines or exploration projects or what have you in the mining space that are going to be in stable jurisdictions where there's a rule of law, where you don't have fear that some government's going to come over and take those assets away, which is a very real risk, especially if things get pretty bad out there. So again, people, jurisdiction are going to be absolutely key in terms of trying to weed out a lot of those companies out there.
Now, you mentioned that the government might, in the end, try to take away people's assets. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think you see that in a lot of these lower tier jurisdictions. There's that risk, or in a situation where they might, governments might go out there and see that, hey, this gold mine is very, very profitable right now. They're becoming even more profitable, and really they'll just increase the taxes and go out and do other things to try to take a piece of that. And that'll obviously ruin your upside as an investor because the profitability is going to be deeply impacted. And again, jurisdiction is going to be key. Going out to a area that's remote, third world, where there's not that rule of law, there's less safety inherently in that asset that you might own or operate because you're not there, you're not a local management team oftentimes, and the government will do what they wish, and really whatever they think is best suited for themselves, as opposed to having somewhere that's got a tier one jurisdiction, as they call them, where there is a rule of law, that that if you have something, it is yours, and they just don't have the ability to go out there and confiscate or take it away from you.
Did you want to tell our viewers a little bit about your company, Calinex Mines?
Yeah, sure. I'd be glad to do so.
So one of the things I was going to ask you about is, as for your team at your mining company, can you tell us a little bit more about it and where you are exploring?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really quite excited about the team that we have and really proud to be working alongside the individuals that we got working with us. And the technical team that's associated with Calinex has been really renowned in the success in exploring for and developing world-class mining deposits, specifically focused actually in northern Manitoba. Northern Manitoba in the Flin Flon Greenstone Belt. This is an area that's had 90 years of continuous production in 32 mines. So I often say that the closest place to find a mine is right next to an existing mine. That's definitely been the case in Flin Flon, Manitoba. And our technical team has been associated with the discovery of 3 of the 4 largest mines in that camp's history. So again, there's not many places in the world where you can go out and find. We've had 90 years of continuous production. This was even producing during the Great Depression. And again, that goes to the nature of the type of deposits that are out there, being that they're high grade and they're polymetallic deposits across both base and precious metals. So with them, you're going to get zinc, copper, as well as the precious metals component in gold and silver. So again, yeah, the technical team is absolutely key, and very excited to be working with these guys and looking out to make another meaningful discovery and kind of add another one under their belt.
So you recently had exciting news. Sprott Investment Group and Rick Rule are now investing in your company based on new exploration results. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to have Rick Rule as well as Sprott and Sprott Group of Investors to be, soon to be our largest shareholders. And they're investing on exploration results we just announced just outside of Flin Flon, that mining camp I told you we were exploring it. Well, we announced we hit a very high grade zinc precious metals discovery in that area. And one of the key things there is, again, this is within, say, 16 kilometers or so, as the crow flies, of the processing facilities in the town of Flin Flon. And these processing facilities have less than 4 years of ore feed that are going to be feeding into that. So there's that immediate need for that community out there, as well as that processing facility to have a new mine to be found. And the area that we made this discovery in was an area where a very large mining company called Plasterdome had explored in the early 1990s. And they had a target for a very large mine. And so what we did is we actually re-entered a historic drill hole that they had drilled in 1993. We extended it 38 meters, and we hit 10.3 meters of 13.1% zinc equivalent. So it was a very high grade discovery in a very proximal location to these processing facilities that are in immediate need of new feed for those facilities. And again, we're eager to follow up on that discovery to see what the potential holds for that area.
Did you want to tell us a little bit about how you're making more acquisitions right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we made 3 acquisitions earlier this year. In May of this year, we announced those. We acquired 3 zinc-rich VMS deposits. Again, VMS deposits are those polymetallic deposits we're exploring for in Flin Flon. Really, kind of the expertise of our team is to look for these type of deposits. But again, we acquired 3 rich zinc deposits in eastern Canada. They're all near, in a stable jurisdiction in Canada, near infrastructure, and are near surface, so they might be amenable to an open pit or lower cost operations. All 3 of the deposits combined equate to nearly 3 billion pounds of zinc equivalent resources. So what that does is it provides optionality for our shareholders in a rising zinc price environment, where, to provide additional leverage. And those will become, more valuable as prices increase in zinc. I'm very bullish on the zinc price environment going forward and have been for some time. In fact, when we actually were negotiating those transactions, zinc was below 80 cents, in the mid 70-cent range. And since then, zinc's had a nice run and has hit recently at $1.12 a pound. And we see more upside there as well. So again, we acquired 3 zinc-rich deposits in eastern Canada. It really gives optionality and upside to our shareholder base. Aside from everything that's going on with our exploration results and discoveries that have been made out there outside of Flin Flon, Manitoba.
So besides precious metals, what are some of the other metals that you find that have a lot of upside right now? I know you believe that base metals such as zinc have a lot of upside right now. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the key areas that I really like in the base metal space in particular has been zinc. And really looked at a position, Callinix, in fact, to benefit from that. And really what's underpinning the zinc market overall is really going back to supply-demand fundamentals. If you look at zinc and performance you've seen this year, where it's been up over 50% year to date, is going to be underpinned by the supply-demand fundamentals that are driving that. On the supply side, you've had a 10 to 15% cutback in global mine supply that's really been due to existing mines, closing down, while there hasn't been exploration and development for new zinc mines. This, meanwhile, we have a kind of a global economy that's growing and increasing demand for zinc has led to the supply-demand imbalance, and I foresee that going forward kind of in the continuing future over the next few years. In fact, having a widening gap between that supply and demand that should drive prices even further higher.
Besides mining stocks, are there other ways that people can invest in the base metal space? And if so, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of investing in mining stocks or investing in some of the other investment vehicles?
Well, in terms of in the base metal space, really you can invest in the future markets, but that's kind of more difficult for the average lay investor. I think the best way to do that, again, is to get exposure to the commodities, underlying commodities, by investing in the explorers and developers and the individual miners that really would stand to benefit from a rising price in the base metal space. And really to focus on things is you really want to look for something that's going to be dominated by one particular metal. That gives you the most exposure and upside to that particular metal's rising prices. If you look, for example, in the zinc space, I think the zinc space is so unique in the sense that it's the second largest base metal out there. But in terms of investable names in tier 1 jurisdictions, very few companies out there to invest in. They kind of give you that pure zinc exposure. I think, if you count how many, earlier stage zinc companies based in North America, you're looking at maybe 5 to 10 at most.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Max. Before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers any last thoughts you had and where they can find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to find us online, you can visit us at callinex.ca. That's CALLINEX.ca. We trade on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker CNX, and then in the United States on the OTCQX, where our ticker is CLLXF. And feel free to give us a call. We're always happy to answer any questions that any investors have for us.
Great. Well, once again, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.